Hi, I'm Mariah Summer, Interim Program Director at Rudy Park, and I'm here with Kathy Baker, the Director of Center Operations. And we are thrilled to be able to share with you today the topic of professionalism at Mile High Early Learning. In this session, we will talk about your role in the classroom at Mile High, including specifics about what to do and what not to do, so that you can feel confident in knowing what is generally expected of you as a floater or staff aide. We will also explore how to use your strengths and passion to add value to the classrooms and take a look at what Mile High has to offer to promote your own professional growth. So let's get started. Take a moment to consider what you think of when you hear the word professionalism. Do you have a positive reaction? A negative reaction? Do you feel like a professional? Please listen to the following quote from a small business website. A strong work ethic suggests that the person places a high value on doing a good job, as well as respecting others and functioning with integrity. Professionalism is a component of the concept of work ethic, which describes how a person comes to work and conducts himself on the job, whether or not anyone appears to be watching. There's a lot of different definitions of professionalism, and I really like this one because of the focus on integrity. It has been said that integrity is how you act when you think no one is looking, and professionalism and integrity really do go hand in hand. Now we'll watch a YouTube video from a few years ago that talks about some of the elements of professionalism from a business point of view.
I'm going to talk about professional, and that's a word we hear all the time. We hear it, we see it, we read it, it's everywhere. We use it so often, I wonder if we really even know, what does it mean? Maybe more importantly, what does being professional mean to you? We can look in a dictionary, and generally we find, three definitions. And the first is professional pertains to a profession. That kind of makes me scratch my head. But the second definition adds a little bit more. Professional is someone who's paid for their occupation. Makes sense. And the third typical definition is a professional is someone who's achieved a high level of knowledge and skill. Okay. But when I look out in the audience this evening and I apply those definitions, I think it applies to just about everybody. So why is it in a community full of knowledgeable and skilled and paid workers that label professional is given to so few people? Well, I think it has to do likely with the value of the service that's delivered. So what differentiates a professional, say, from a technician? The technician is a very skilled and savvy, knowledgeable person. But the difference between the two, the professional delivers judgment. Yeah, that considered decision, that valued judgment. In fact, the more uncertainties we face, the more important judgment becomes, and more important the role of the professional. But professional, it's an odd word. I mean, it's not just a label or a title. It also can be used to describe or mean attitudes, behaviors, and actions. Think about it for a minute. If we combine those three, the effect of those three has some pretty profound implications. And the reason is that attitudes drive behaviors, and behaviors drive actions, and then actions reinforce attitudes. And what those three things mean is what they're describing is literally us as individuals. So that tells me that being professional, that can be applied by anyone and everyone. I think that's a good thing. The process of being a professional, it's not an event. Maybe I should have said that a little more clearly. The whole way of becoming a professional, it's not an event, it's a process. It's a journey. And it takes some real internal drive and motivation, but it's often sparked with interest and desire. That process for me started long ago when I was able to become a member of the mountain rescue team when I was in junior high school. And very early on, I realized and learned the value of being a professional. Because in mountain rescue, uncertainty just abounds. And judgment is mission critical to what we do in mountain rescue. And over the years, I learned more about professionalism, and what I see is a framework to being a professional. And that framework, well, it consists of 4 different aspects. And here's sort of the short version of my talk. But those 4 aspects to being a professional are simply knowing, doing, helping, and learning. I might say, well, wait a minute, Dale. Is that really something, or is that just the world according to Dale? Well, it actually is some real meat to this substance. Those first 3, knowing, doing, and helping, those were identified by psychologists and sociologists more than 25 years ago. But they missed the boat. It wasn't complete. Because being a professional is a process. So I've added learning to that, because that keeps that process going. And the beauty of being a professional, what I've learned is, sure, it applies to me in work, but it also applies at home, it applies in school, it applies in the mountains, and certainly at work. And my journey to that, as I said, started with mountain rescue. More than 50 years ago, here in Evergreen, the Alpine Rescue Team was formed. And you gotta remember, that far back, Evergreen was really a small place. And they had a real challenge to have enough members that could drop everything and just head off into the mountains to help people. And so within a few years, the leadership realized that young people, teenagers, could actually do that hard work of adults. And plus, we had time. So back in the day, we could become a member of Alpine Rescue Team when we were 14. And some of us even got on a little bit earlier. But what was really cool, and I think a very unique feature of Alpine, was that we were not junior members. And yeah, and I did join after color photography came out. I will point that out. But we were not junior members, because once that we demonstrated that we could do the job, we were expected to do the job whenever needed. And that's really an important thing when you're a young person. And certainly there's some limitations to that, or some limiting factors. I mean, I've got to admit, when you're a 14, 15-year-old teenager, boy, really, size matters. We were not the biggest animal in the woods at 14, 15, or even some of us 13 or 12. We had to keep good grades so that we could be let out of school when we were called on missions. I've got to admit, that was one of the coolest things of being on Alpine, junior high and high school, was when that message came over the PA. Attention all Alpine Rescue Team members, please come to the office. We always thought we were so cool. It didn't happen enough, but it was pretty cool. But most important, we had to keep our parents happy and pleased with what we were doing, because they're the ones that answered the phone in the middle of the night. They're the ones that had to wake us up and often drive us to some staging area at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it became really a big deal when we could drive, because we didn't have to rely as much on our parents. We didn't have to ride our bikes sometimes to get to missions and trainings. And they didn't have to mooch rides. We had that independence, which we all know is a great thing. But the key thing is that we were not treated as juniors. We were treated as equals, because we worked really hard. And we worked right alongside those adults. By the time we were in high school, at least some of us were actually starting to lead or direct significant portions of the search and rescues, and even directing the entire operation. This is high schoolers doing this. And also being at that age, there were times when, maybe the biggest thing is when my voice stopped changing. Because it was really hard to call up and order up a helicopter when you call the military and you wake up a captain or a major in the middle of the night who's now grumpy and your voice starts cracking. It just didn't go over very well. So we learned very early on to speak with confidence and authority and an even tone to our voice. But we learned a lot. Well, and I've got to say, I'm still at it 40 years later, enjoying it, enjoying all of my colleagues on the team, learning a lot. So with that, I bring a challenge to you guys. And think of everything that you're doing or will do, that you do it within this framework or this context of being a professional. And remember those 4 aspects of being a professional. First one, being professional is knowing. And I mean, learn everything that you can and as much as you can. And you need to know more than just having an awareness. You need to understand. And take that knowledge and apply it. Start doing something with it. Because when you're doing something with it, you're practicing. And that's where you develop skills. And when you take knowledge and you combine it with skill, you're going to start to realize that there's many options, many solutions to solving problems. That third aspect of being a professional is helping. And we've heard that term given in several different ways tonight. Giving, helping, being there for people. Helping. Professionals help people. Because remember I said at that highest level, what the professional offers is judgment. And in mountain rescue, that judgment comes with a lot of hard work. No doubt about it. But that helping is where you make a difference. And professionals make a difference in people's lives. And the last is to make a commitment to learning. Make a commitment to lifelong learning. Because learning keeps you current, keeps your skills and knowledge current and up to date. But more importantly, learning, let me back up, more importantly is because yesterday's knowledge and skills aren't always going to be good enough to solve tomorrow's problems. So everything that you do, be professional in what you do. It's going to make you better. And being professional is going to probably help you make your community a better place too. Thank you.
So this speaker defined a professional as someone who is paid for their work, who has knowledge of their field of work, who performs well at their work, and who has purpose in their work, and who is a continual learner. The field of early childhood has grown by leaps and bounds in the last several years, and it will continue to evolve. So being committed to ongoing professional development is very, very important.
So let's move on to talking about specifically what does a professional employee look like at Mile High Early Learning? What are some of those specific traits and things that we are looking for and wanting to cultivate? There are actually several traits and behaviors that make someone a valuable part of a working team. When you work at one of our schools, you are part of a team of that overall center, as well as part of a classroom team that you are supporting. As a floater, you may be asked to literally float between classrooms to give 10-minute breaks, to give a 30 or 60-minute lunch. You may be asked to cover ratios just while they're waiting for a second teacher to come or go. Or there may be days when you are assigned to a specific classroom for the entire day in order to cover for somebody who is off. You may end up developing favorite classrooms, and actually I hope you do. But often in the normal routine of things, we settle into a predictable schedule for you as a floater, but each day can be different. We hope that you enjoy the variety As someone who goes into each or several classrooms, you have a wonderful opportunity to develop positive relationships with all the staff throughout the center. It's really a unique position to be in. You have the chance to be a positive influence on everyone, and you are just such an invaluable part of our program. I always loved my floaters as a director. In order for you to be successful, it's critical that you act with integrity, as we said, but regarding specifically the topics listed on this slide. It is important to be on time for every shift, to seldom call out, to always communicate with your program director if something comes up. It's important to have a gracious attitude if you're asked to change what was planned and support in a different classroom or different age group, since the director needs to stay on top of the needs of the entire center, and sometimes there are days where that changes throughout the day. It's important to follow the dress code that you were given at your onboarding orientation and to set an example there. It's important to keep all food and drinks outside the classrooms and take with you only water in a clear container into the classroom. So just so you understand, this is a part of our curriculum. We actually want to model drinking water for the children, since that is literally the healthiest thing for them, and we tend to not drink enough. If a child sees you bring some sort of covered container into the room, they're going to assume it's soda or coffee or something like that. So we really want it to be clear so that they can see that it is water in there. And then you can have your other drinks outside the classroom on your own breaks. Another area, it's important to keep your personal devices outside of the classroom, and that includes cell phones and iWatches. This can be hard for people because we are used to just having that constant access to these devices, but it's a non-negotiable issue with licensing regs. So if something comes up and you have a personal situation where you may need to have somebody contact you during the day, we take care of you by asking you to give out the center's phone number, not your personal phone number. And then that day, let your director know that you're expecting a call, and then they will plan to pull you out of ratio when that call comes in. So we can take care of you and still keep those devices outside. Compliance in all of these areas on the slide, working together, it sets a positive professional tone throughout the center, and it helps to keep things running smoothly. You know, our schools are full of human people who make mistakes, so I'm not saying we do this all perfectly, but this really is the goal and the expectation. So I came across this little anecdote, and I really enjoyed it. I'm just going to read it briefly because it does demonstrate how we would love our schools to be. This person writing the article said that when she walked into an early childhood program that she'd been associated with for over 30 years, she overheard the following conversation between a 3-year-old named Abby and her mother, Susan. So little Abby said, "Hey, look, there's Mrs. Miller." And Mom said, "How do you know her?" And Abby said, "Well, she's a friend of my teacher." "Mom, don't you know that all the teachers are friends here?" So I just thought that was such a profound statement. And this person said as well, and it stopped her in her tracks. She thought about the kinds of things that we as adults unwittingly convey to children every day. If Abby at age 3 can sense the strong and mostly positive relationships among staff members on our team, then it's just as likely that she can sense when there's tension or unease. And when human beings work together, there will inevitably be times when relationships feel challenging, and that's okay. But staff's efforts to make positive connections among coworkers a valued goal. When we do that, children learn how to form positive relationships by example. So I just thought this was a wonderful reminder that we need to work together to help each other be our best selves, and we will be happier, and then the children will also sense that tone and they will be happier too. So let's move on to talking about some specifics of what it looks like in the classroom once you get in there. So again, it's important to have integrity in all of these areas listed in order to create a safe, warm community for our children and for each other. It's important to use appropriate language and to speak respectfully of others, both adults and children. And this is huge. It's important to keep personal information confidential. That means you won't always get to know details of things. When you're asked to do something, you don't really always get to know why, because we're keeping the reasons confidential when we have to shift. It's important to say things. If you are frustrated in a classroom, to say, oh, I'm feeling frustrated that this one particular child keeps acting out and doing blah, blah, blah. I wonder what we can do. That's a way to convey frustration in a constructive way, instead of, I'm so sick of so-and-so and how much work he is. That type of attitude is not really going to help you to feel better. Even if you feel like you're venting, and maybe you're venting to another employee in the break room and you think, well, it's okay in here. The truth is, it's probably not going to make you feel better if you say things in a negative way. It just tends to keep you in that negative space. So a good rule of thumb is to always talk with a parent in the classroom as if a child is part of the conversation, so you don't talk over a child in the conversation. And then, of course, everybody knows it's a good idea to always talk as if that person could walk in and overhear you and you would be okay with what they heard you saying. So in another area, it's important to keep appropriate boundaries with parents. Please don't share your personal phone numbers with them or friend them on social media. I know that this is a temptation and it's well-meaning, but it can and has led to some issues. If a parent comes in at arrival, of course you want to say, hey, how was your weekend? How are you? But if they share some things, please don't ask them to elaborate about the party they went to or the family struggles they might be having. That's really just not the time or place for that to happen. I would recommend you be careful about birthday invitations or requests to babysit for them outside of work hours. Those things are not forbidden. We don't try to tell you what you can do in your off time. But if you attend one child's birthday, you need to attend them all, and that can be overwhelming. And if you babysit for someone and something doesn't go well, and this has happened, your relationship might be negatively affected then when at the center, and it just follows. So lastly, please be careful what you post on social media outside of work. If you are on Facebook and you list that you work for Mile High Early Learning, please don't post complaints about work there. If you join the Mile High Facebook page, please keep your comments positive in that public domain. Now, please understand, administrators at all levels of Mile High, all the way up to our president, Dr. Harris, we do care very much about concerns that you have. We just ask that you bring those concerns to us, that we can work through them together. It really doesn't help to just post them negatively out there, but we do want to hear them internally. Please remember to present concerns wherever you are in a constructive manner, and remember that there is a time and place for all of them to be addressed. Thank you.
So moving on, we'll talk about what a professional classroom looks like. There are many elements of a classroom that reflect the teaching team. What would you expect classrooms to look like at your school? What are some specific characteristics you think are important and would prefer to see in the classrooms where you support? We're going to take a look at some different classroom photos. These are not meant to be good or bad classrooms, just to get you thinking about the environment. As you look at the photos, think about the environment they create for the children. Is the classroom light or dark, cluttered or tidy? Bare? Does it feel welcoming? What do these classroom photos tell you about the teachers who work in them? And what could you bring to each of these different classrooms? The first photo we're looking at is a preschool classroom. Take a moment to really look at the photo. So here's what I thought about looking at this photo. Even though it doesn't fit with our aesthetic at Mile High, it's clear that the teachers have chosen the materials with care. The classroom is tidy and bright, and there's natural light coming in. So as a staff aide or floater in this room, what do you need to be aware of? Well, there are a lot of tall materials on the shelf. I see a lot of spaces where a child could be out of sight. In this classroom, you can contribute by paying close attention to active supervision. Here's an infant room. What do you see? I see a room with a lot for the infants to do. Things to climb, books to look at, a little kitchen, materials on the shelves. I also see that there's a lot going on with decorations and wall displays. As a staff aide or floater, you probably won't want to go into a classroom and start critiquing the teacher's decoration strategies, but you could offer to support them with finding time to update them. You could say something like, would it help if I kept an eye on the children so you can make cubby labels for the new child, or even offer to make the labels for them? And for me personally, these decorations are a little overwhelming. And if you had a good relationship with the teacher in this classroom, you might be able to support them in suggesting some things that could be taken down. The next classroom we're looking at is a toddler classroom. Take a minute. So here's what I see when I'm looking at this classroom. The first thing is that it's pretty dark. There could be a lot of reasons for this. The children might have been resting, or there might be a child who's overstimulated by the bright light. It's best to ask before you change things in a classroom, but most of the time it would be a good idea to let some light in. Another thing I notice about this room is that, like many of our classrooms at Mile High, there's just not a lot of room for materials here. These teachers would probably really appreciate it if you offered to help them rotate their materials every so often. Finally, you might notice that there's a lot of clutter on top of the cubbies. If you have a flair for organization, you could offer to help the teachers come up with some strategies for storage. Mile High has a budget for classroom materials, and it's okay to ask for what you need to support a classroom. And our last photo is another toddler classroom. What does this room tell you? What I see is that there's a lot of care and attention paid to the setup of the environment in this classroom. I really notice the cleanliness and sense of order that they've created here, which allows the children to focus on their activities. This classroom looks like it was designed by a teacher with a strong Montessori background. Traditional Montessori teachers often care very deeply about how materials are presented to the children. So it's important to communicate with this classroom teacher before engaging with the children in activities. Also, in this classroom or any classroom, the teachers would probably be very appreciative of support with the cleaning. You could choose an area of the classroom at nap time each day to wipe down the shelves and tidy the materials. And I hope that looking at these photos in this activity has really given you an idea of just how much you can contribute to the classrooms that you support.
Thank you. So now let's talk about some of the specific tasks that you might be asked to do when supporting a Mile High classroom, especially on a regular basis. So the role of the floater can look, there are various things, I guess, that go into the role of the floater. If you're new to Mile High, you may wonder what to expect or what is expected of you when you enter a classroom. The first most important thing for you to do is to ask the teachers. And I would start with, how many children do you have, right as you walk into the classroom? And that's just true all day long if you get moved from room to room. So you walk in and it's, how many children do you have? Then you count for yourself, how many children do you see? And then you make sure that number matched. And then you match that number to the attendance form that is in use, and every classroom has them. And we will talk about, it's either what we call the BLS or the CSR, and we will show you that in just a moment. But whichever form is using, it is really important that the number that the teacher says, the actual number of children that you can locate, and the attendance sheets all have to match. When licensing walks into the classrooms to check, and they do this every so often, that's one of the first things that they will ask you. So then once you are in the room, please let the teachers know what you are there for. You might be there to give them a 10-minute break, or you might be there to give them their lunch, or you might be there until so-and-so comes. Whatever it is, just communicate with them. And then please observe the classroom so that you can continue the flow of the classroom rather than disrupt it. And then you might even want to ask the teacher, hey, what can I do to help? Where would you like me? If they don't have any specific instructions for you, then you can make your best guess as what you think would be most helpful. If something needs cleaning or to be put away, feel free to address it. If a child is crying or needs assistance, please go ahead and go over to him or to her. And then just keep an eye out as well that for ideal proper supervision in a classroom, one teacher in the room should be up overseeing the movement and safety of all the children, and then one teacher should be down to connect with children, extend learning, guide a small group activity, etc. So that one up, one down is kind of a nice way to remember what should be happening in there. This is the BLS that I was talking about to you, and you can see the actual letters on there. This is our primary attendance form, and it is, you'll see it, there's a row for each child going across, and then all the days go down in the columns. This form is used to record this parent signature. Parent signatures have to have a time, and they have to sign that in blue or black ink, in for the day and then out at the end of the day. And this is how we meet one of our licensing requirements. This form is also used to record when children have meals. So that's why we call it the BLS, because when a child has breakfast, somebody should be circling it. The L should be circled for lunch, the S for snack. And if you do it while the child is eating, then that's even better, than it's guaranteed to be accurate. This particular form is currently being kept up to date outside the classroom due to COVID restrictions, but we will eventually go back to having them back in the classroom when the pandemic is over. This form you should find in every classroom, pandemic or not. This is the child supervision roster, or the CSR. It's always kept with the children. And it starts to be used when the first child enters the classroom. Their name should immediately be written on the next line of the form. And then you keep adding as children come in. And then at the times listed across the top, one teacher must mark that each of those children are still in attendance. If or when a child leaves the room for speech therapy or whatever reason, then the time they leave or the time they left should be written in, and then you write them back in when they return. When a child leaves at the end of the day, you write the time of departure in that same slot, and then push a dash through the rest of the boxes for that day. The teachers in the classroom will probably be doing this on their own, but anyone can do it, including you. The thing is, it has to be updated by someone all throughout the day at each of those intervals, and that's another thing that licensing reps will look for when they come to visit. We can use this to say, this is how we are keeping track of the children. And ideally, you would be doing this in a name to face way, like really learn to know the names of each child, and these are the children in our classroom at the moment. So logistically, if you were ever asked to open up a classroom and you were the first one in there, this would only happen. You might go and prepare a classroom, but you are not going to be the only one greeting a child unless you are group leader qualified. But basically the steps are very simple. Do a quick walk through the classroom and make sure that everything appears safe, that nothing strange, there's no broken glass from something happened overnight or tile fell from the ceiling, etc. So just do a visual walk through the classroom and make sure everything looks good to go. You'll need to either prepare or check the bleach bottles and make sure that they are the right levels of to meet the requirements of sanitizing or disinfectant, and someone will train you on that if you are unfamiliar. Somebody needs to mark the bleach log, which is held in the health and safety notebook, And then you would take the chairs down off the tables. Chairs cannot be up on tables when children are in the room, or that would be a citation. So take the chairs down first. I know children love to help, but they really are not supposed to be in there when that's happening. Then use that sanitizer to sanitize all the tables or any other surfaces that look like they need it. Find the attendance sheet, whether it's the BLS or the CSR, and make sure that it's ready to go, and then prepare to greet parents and children with the appropriate person in the room. So the midday routines, the types of things that you'll be asked to do, fall into 3 categories. The first is the care routines, and I want you to look at these not as tasks, but they're actually care routines. Diapering and toileting allow you an opportunity to improve your relationship with each child as you're doing them. Or when a child uses the bathroom on their own, they're older and they're taking care of that. When they are done, please check after each use. They can help to clean up certain things, but mostly we need to make sure that you make sure it's appropriate for the next child to use. The toilet should be flushed, should be clean for a new person. Cleaning and food prep are also care routines in the classroom because you are doing this for the children. The children can help you with those, which would also potentially strengthen your relationship with the child. Just make sure that children are not too close when you spray a bleach bottle of any either sanitizer or disinfectant. If they really want to help, you can give them a small spray bottle filled with water, and they can help you spray and to wipe down tables that way. Active supervision is listed next, and we already talked about that, but it is just of such primary importance, and we need to make sure that somebody is keeping track of, or actually all the teachers should be keeping track of how many children are there at all times. And then lastly, child interactions. If everything is prepared, if nothing needs to be set up for the next transition, if you are just in that wonderful open work time in the classroom, we want you to interact with the children as well intentionally. So you can support with one-on-one interactions with children. You can lead a small group activity. You might redirect children as needed as things come up during these times. Or if there's a large group time and the lead teacher is leading that, you can be the one to kind of make sure all of the other children are properly engaged, or if they need help tying their shoe, you take care of that. Or you might just learn how over time to support with Teaching Strategies Gold and that assessment tool, and give some information to the teachers so that you can be a help to them that way. Closing the classroom at the end of the day is just the reverse of how you opened it. Just make sure, obviously, that all the children really are gone. Double check, mark that BLS and CSR form to make sure they're all completed. Get the next one for the next day up onto the top of the clipboard. Put away all of the materials. Sanitize all those tables. Again, I know we sanitize a lot, but that's how we keep a healthy classroom. Put the chairs back on top of the tables so that the floors can be cleaned overnight. Check the bathrooms, please don't leave them a disaster. The janitors will clean the bathrooms for you, but you should not leave a lot of stuff on the ground. The toilet should be flushed. It should be ready to be cleaned. And then gather the trash. And I know this varies per center, but it is a nice idea to kind of tie off the trash and to get them out of the classroom or wherever your director tells you they can go. And this sounds silly, but turn off the light. That lets the director know that that classroom is closed down and ready to end the day.
So now that you have heard what your current role is, let's talk about where you're headed. What can you do to promote your own professional growth? And where would you like to be in the next few years? Would you like to advance to a different job role? What new skills or knowledge would you like to have by then? What credentials or degrees would you like to complete? Let's start by giving you a little more information about Mile High Early Learning as an organization. Our public website provides some insight into who we are, who we serve, and what we value. In a nutshell, we tell people that our work is providing a quality educational experience inspired by the Montessori approach for Denver's most vulnerable children. And our mission is to enable all children to succeed in school by providing resources and education to inspire a lifetime of learning and self-sufficiency. Both of those statements describe how we give our highest priority to children who have the highest number of risk factors and who need us most. Because of this, we serve a lot of children who need extra support in the classroom. This can be challenging, and it means that we have to have supports and training in place for our teachers who are on the front line in the day-to-day work of making this happen. If you are ever overwhelmed in a classroom or wonder how to respond to specific challenging behaviors, please reach out to your classroom teammates, your directors, or your center coach. There are lots of systems and lots of people available to help. In addition to our mission, Mile High has a vision for equity, which is that children, families, and staff of all racial, cultural, economic, and social backgrounds are joyfully welcomed into a learning community that prioritizes equity and finds strength in diversity. We have been talking about race and equity for many years now, and we continue to be committed to do our best to be part of the solution in making our community one that feels safe for everyone and truly celebrates diversity of all kinds. As Mile High employees, we should all represent and uphold this mission and vision. This is a key part of how we see professionalism at Mile High Early Learning. So please take a moment to think about your professional goals. There are many opportunities for you to take trainings that are free. You can find a wide variety of modules in the PDIS system, which you should already have an account in. But your director or your coach are great resources if you're having trouble with that. Also, the Denver Early Childhood Council and Clayton Early Learning often hold trainings that are free to people who work for nonprofit programs like Mile High. You're not usually paid for your time for these trainings unless they are required for your job position, but we encourage you to consider taking those that pique your interest. Mile High also has a huge commitment to providing trainings for staff during days throughout the year when staff are paid but students don't attend. We currently have 1 full week of training during spring break at the end of March and 1 full week in mid-August. And there are other individual days planned in other months throughout the school year. The next slide gives you some information on other larger opportunities for training through Mile High. Generally, staff are asked to stay 1 to 2 years after completing one of these programs. Having these degrees and certifications helps staff to build a career in the field of early childhood education and can help support a staff person's interest to potentially move to different positions within the organization. Mile High encourages every staff aide or floater to create a plan to become group leader qualified. Once someone reaches this goal, then they can be used occasionally to be alone with children, they will receive a pay raise, and they may qualify for other positions within the company. Our website gives details about current educational opportunities for staff, but here are some of what we've got going on. Mile High implements a gold medal rated CDA program that is free to Mile High staff who've been working with the organization for 6 months or more. This is one of the fastest ways to become group leader qualified. All costs are paid by Mile High, and staff are paid for their time to attend these classes. If this is something you're interested in, contact Michaela. Her contact information is on the board. We also recently started a partnership that is helping a few staff complete their bachelor's degree in human development. This is too new to be on the website, but is another example of the wide opportunities that Mile High can offer to our staff. We also have a partnership with the University of Colorado at Denver to support staff to complete a master's in human development, with an emphasis in either leadership or family engagement. We usually ask staff to commit to remain employed with the organization for 1 to 2 years after completion of these programs, but the degree or certificate belongs to you. Mile High also asks staff to set personal professional development goals each year and asks supervisors to support staff in meeting these goals and or moving to other positions within the organization.
So we are going to end our time together with a quick online activity. Please go to the link on this slide and complete a short series of questions that will give you some results, some information on your own personality style. It will include strengths and challenges of your personality. You'll find a sheet then in your PDI packet that will ask you a series of questions regarding this information and what it tells you about yourself, how you can apply that to your work here with us. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to your program director or your coach. I hope you have fun with this activity. And we really do look forward to getting to know you better as you work with us over the next several years. Have a good rest of your day.
Bye.